Hello and welcome to Anderstorp in Sweden for the latest instalment in the International Formula Masters Series. It's the fifth race weekend of the championship, and late July brings us to Scandinavia. This race weekend, a late replacement for the Turkish race that was due to be scheduled at this stage, and the drivers find themselves very much in unfamiliar territory. Hello everybody, I'm Martin Haven, and here you see the scene at a sunny Anderstorp, but look overhead. Like a lot of Northern Europe, Sweden's summer has consisted predominantly of heavy rain, and that's been a very big factor so far this weekend. Qualifying was wet to dry, and this morning most of the teams arrived to find their awnings underwater. A huge lake in the middle of the paddock meant, as you can see there beside Rodolfo Avila's car, a lot of the teams having to hurriedly dig out Wellingtons that they didn't expect to need. Everybody was warned to bring mosquito cream for the hot Swedish summer, but that has not been necessary. Well, qualifying ended in dry conditions, and that saw some very interesting times. Within 5 minutes of the end of qualifying, there was still a very wet track and drivers down in the 1:39 39s. This is the scene this morning. You can see the big tractor pumping everything out, but teams really had to scramble to try and figure out some way of getting the machinery out without drowning it. Of course, after yesterday's qualifying session, most of the teams will have done all their pre-race work yesterday evening, and that is just as well, because it's been pretty wet in the Formula Masters paddock. However, all the cars do now seem to be on the grid, and there were 29 cars turned up for qualifying yesterday. Now, Pablo Sanchez Lopez, as ever, with mum and dad here, and he lines up in 7th place. Pole time set by Marco Bononomi in Antonio Ferrari's Euronova racing car. 1:38.9. Now, the fastest time at the end of qualifying was actually set by Jerome D'Ambrosio, 1:36.6. And D'Ambrosio ended the session as the fastest of all. He, in fact, was nearly 1.3 seconds quicker than anybody else. But what happened within 4 or 5 minutes of the checkered flag, suddenly a dry line was visible all the way round what was otherwise a wet racing track, and drivers went 3 to 4 seconds quicker, literally almost from one lap to the next. And it was then D'Ambrosio here who lines up 5th, who was the last man across the line and had the fastest time. But yellow flags were out because Johnny Cecotto Jr. had gone off the circuit, and as a result, although it could be argued, and was, that the drivers had improved their times on the dry part of the circuit and not in the yellow flag zone, it was felt that since they have been so strenuously reminded time after time to obey yellow flags and to not improve times under yellow flag conditions, that the qualifying session would effectively have a line drawn under it when the yellow flags came out for Cecotto's incident, and the times would be taken from then. So Bononomi is on pole from Frankie Provenzano, a really topsy-turvy front row. Chris van der Drift, you just saw there, in 3rd place for JD Motorsport. We expect to see him at the front. Casper Andersson, the Dane for JD, he lines up in 4th place ahead of Jerome D'Ambrosio, our points leader. So at the moment, D'Ambrosio with 2 wins back-to-back at Brno is our series leader, and the top Scandinavian, Casper Andersson, lines up in 4th place. Norbert Seeler, one of our race winners from Porto, is 6th on the grid, and this young man, just 25 years of age, already with a very successful Formula 3000 career behind him. Not an international Formula 3000, but in the Euro Formula 3000, and he came to the series for the first time at Porto and already has claimed a win and a 2nd points finish. Well, you just saw Marco Bononomi, our pole sitter. We're going to take a quick commercial break as the cars get ready to go away. 5 minutes to the start here in Anderstorp. A minute to go before the cars roll off for the International Formula Masters Series. Round 9 of the series here at Anderstorp in Sweden. And with the grid clear, quick final word there to make sure that everything is running okay. Michele Caliendo and his engineer conferring. Now Caliendo down towards the tail of the grid, 27th after qualifying. Is he okay to start? We'll see in a moment or two. They'll be headed away by the man on the right-hand side of your picture, Marco Bononomi, the Italian for Euronova. Frankie Provenzano alongside him. 22-year-old Bononomi on pole, 21-year-old Provenzano behind him. In this field, generally of very young drivers. We've got a couple of 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, and the youngest in the field, Pablo Sanchez Lopez of Mexico, 17 years old. Lines up 7th on the grid. Well, away they all go so far. Around this individual Anderstorp circuit with some long sweeping corners, long 180-degree first corner, the Sodra curve. And that brings them out onto the first straight. Now, this is actually a tiny airfield runway, so onto, well, as they come onto it, 04 left, which is the runway direction that they're heading into the easterly wind. And a long runway it is. It makes up about a third of the length of the circuit, and it's going to be fabulous seeing these cars here because they really should benefit greatly from the slipstream. Running down the grid order for you there, Bononomi, Provenzano ahead of series front runners Vanderdrift, Anderson, D'Ambrosio, and first-time winner Siedler, Sanchez Lopez, Avila, Nick de Bruyn, Pierre Rag, and the rest of them. So 29 cars on the grid, and a very, very entertaining Anderstorp circuit in front of them. The Swedish Raceway will be quite a challenge for these drivers. They end the straight with 2 right-hand corners, then sweep down here into this banked corner. Most of the corners on the track are banked corners, in fact. The GP curve, the Opel curve, and here through Hansen and then into the carousel, a 270-degree corner that brings them down into the final sharp left-hander before the short pit straight. Well, as well as the pit straight, there's of course the big runway, but there are also 2 decent, in fact 3 decent other straights as well. This should be a very, very entertaining track to watch these guys perform on. So Alberto Costa at the tail of the field. Well, the major disappointments in qualifying, 28th fastest, Oliver Campos Hull. He's been quite a pacey front runner. Superb in Valencia, 2 points finishes, none since there, but he should have the ability to be a lot further up than he is, and he will hope to work his way up the field in this first race. Nine cars coming to the grid here at Anderstorp in Sweden for round 9 of the International Formula Masters Series. As ever, the first of a pair of races supporting the World Touring Car Championship. And the field is headed by 22-year-old Marco Bononomi of Italy for Euronova, with Frankie Provenzano, his 21-year-old compatriot, on the outside of the front row of the grid. Then our series front runners. Jerome D'Ambrosio is 5th behind the 2 JD Motorsport drivers who are his rivals, Chris Vanderdrift 3rd and Casper Anderson in 4th place. Salvatore Gatto, who currently lies 2nd in the points, is a long way down the order in 20th place. And the man who lies 3rd in the standings, Pablo Sanchez Lopez of Mexico, has qualified in 7th place. Well, trouble there for Alberto Costa. The Euronova driver's car shunting away. You can see his helmet bouncing there as it chunters around. And the pole sitter has been on the grid a long while. ISR team members waiting for Nick de Bruyn to get underway. He starts in 9th, and Eric Yanis, the younger brother of Jarek Yanis, starts in 17th place on this 29-car grid. So, ready to go. The red lights are on, and off they go. Well, very quick starting further back, but the poleman took a while to react. Marco Bononomi does get his nose in front of Frankie Provenzano, but the JD Motorsport drivers, Chris van der Drift and Casper Anderson, trying to come around the outside as they head onto the airfield straight for the first time down this long runway. They'll be approaching 180 kilometers an hour at the end of it, and Bononomi on the left-hand side of the picture. That's Casper Anderson trying to go around the outside. The Dane is car 8, and he's got to stay on the grey stuff, because if you put a wheel wrong here, you're not on grass, you are in real marshland. It is extremely wet, very, very treacherous indeed, as we see them battling behind. That's the battle for third place. Around the outside goes Chris van der Drift, car number 7, and that's Provenzano. Well, he did very well in qualifying. Oh, and that's that van der Drift off. Or was that right behind him? You can see there is no stopping these cars once they get off the track. And that might just have been Chris van der Drift's race ended there. Leader is Marco Bononomi. Casper Anderson in second place. And third place is Provenzano, and we have, I'm sure, lost Chris van der Drift. Well, the rest of the field sweeping through towards the end of the lap, plunging down into these banked corners. Out of the final corner then, and onto the pit straight comes the leader. The first of 19 laps, 35-minute maximum race distance. Oh, and somebody else very long way off there on the grass. And somebody coming out of the pit lane, that'll be Alberto Costa. You'll see him appear towards the back of the picture in a few minutes. So it's Bononomi leading from Anderson, Provenzano third, Jerome D'Ambrosio, the championship leader, in fourth, and he's now looking for third, the second of those white and blue cars. Then Sanchez Lopez, Seidler, De Bruyne, Avila, Rag, Persiani, and the rest very, very close together. But Marco Bononomi in the lead is trying to break the opposition, seeing if he can stretch away. Casper Anderson's going with him. And the battle for third, still Jerome D'Ambrosio, looking to try and get by Frankie Provenzano. Well, we have definitely lost Chris van der Drift. Johnny Cecotto Jr. disappeared on the first lap as well. So van der Drift has come into the pits, and wait to see whether he rejoins or not. Seems unlikely. Down the inside for third place. There's the move that he was trying to pull off all the way around the last lap. Jerome D'Ambrosio up into third. Bononomi now fourth. Don't forget, started in second, and he has got the white with blue highlights car. That's Pablo Sanchez Lopez, our youngest driver. 17-year-old Mexican. Dive bombs him on the inside, opens the door, and through will come Norbert Seidler as well. So Seidler joined the series. Oh, and sits on the outside. Can he hold on? That's Nick De Bruyne inside him. Seidler will hold on, and onto the straight they'll go wheel to wheel. De Bruyne's got the inside line, but Seidler's got the toe from Provenzano. So Norbert Seidler with the advantage. De Bruyne with the inside line, but Seidler should be quicker on the straight. De Bruyne tries to pick up the toe now, but Seidler gets his nose in front. De Bruyne around the outside of Provenzano, and that's dangerous territory, as van der Drift found out earlier on. De Bruyne's still there, trail breaking around the outside. Oh, and forced into a spin over the curbs. They're pretty high there. Selects first gear, tries to find it. Has he got the engine running or not? Yes, he has, but that's his chance. Nick De Bruyne pushed down the order there. And that's the second time that Provenzano has denied a driver racing room. Now, let's have a look again at the start. Some bizarre starting at the back. A couple of cars rolling onto their grid positions as the lights changed. And big confusion in the back of the field there. Well, the Allen's Racing number 14, Giuseppe Terranova, all over the grass. And onto the straight, it was very confusing. That was van der Drift being pushed off by Provenzano. And Provenzano might argue that because he had the inside line and he had the corner, he was within his rights to take the line. And a couple of laps later, he did exactly the same thing there to Nick De Bruyne. I have to say, if I was one of the stewards, I would be looking at Provenzano's driving, because you have to give drivers racing room, particularly when everybody knows what the conditions are like off track. It's not just wet, it can be dangerous as well. Bononomi leads from Anderson. Jerome D'Ambrosio third, closing the gap down to the lead pair. Sanchez Lopez and Seidler, and now Rodolfo Avila have got by. Pierre Rag, Persiani, they've all got by. So you just saw the battle for second. Here is the queue a little further down. And there is Johnny Cecotto, car number 29. And he's a very long way down the order after the confusion at the start. He didn't have the greatest time in qualifying, only 12th. And now he is stuck down the order. Yellow flags are out, but Cecotto a lap behind the leaders. Marco Bononomi out front, Casper Andersson second, and the blue and silver car there, the Cram competition driver, Jerome D'Ambrosio. D'Ambrosio started the season as one of the accepted, fancied front runners, and so it has proved. Big slide for Pablo Sanchez Lopez, trying to hold off Norbert Siedler. Sanchez Lopez third in the championship, and with a very good chance of jumping up to second here. Salvatore Gatto, who lies second in the points, 4 ahead of Sanchez Lopez coming into this race, is a long way down, as you can see. In fact, you haven't seen him yet. He's in 19th place. So as this lead battle continues, Sanchez Lopez and Siedler 4th and 5th. Sanchez Lopez must finish this race in the points. Very, very important indeed. Yellow flags out, so no overtaking down there. And the Matson curve, heading down the straight into the Grand Prix corner, GP curve. There you see Nick de Bruyn's car being rescued. High curbs on the inside, and unfortunately that means when it rains, a big standing water puddle on the inside of that corner, and banked here as well as they go left through Opel, and again ditto, lots of water on the inside. Now quite a good straight down here into Hansen and the carousel, and it looks as though D'Ambrosio is really piling the pressure on Casper Andersson. Andersson is the white car with the black and red highlights, and he is defending hard from the Frenchman. This is going to be a long race for Casper Andersson, and at the moment Bononomi is trying to make a break, and that's exactly what he must be doing at this stage. Past the pits they come again. 6 of 19 laps completed. Just a whisker over 4 kilometres this circuit at Anderstorp. And the ADM team, well, they're having a bit of a stress there themselves with one of the other crews arguing about whose tyre trolleys are going where. Well, Bononomi breaking away now. That's certainly more than 0.6 of a second at the moment. And it's absolutely critical for the leader that while D'Ambrosio attacks Andersson, Bononomi gets his head down and tries to charge away, because who knows what the weather will bring. At the moment, sunny, relatively dry. This track does dry remarkably quickly. There's a decent breeze as well to help it, but it also gets very wet very fast, because the rain here has not been the odd little shower. It has been very, very wet indeed. So lead trio trying to escape, but look, Sanchez Lopez a little clear of Siedler, is closing them down. Let's have a look at the gap between third D'Ambrosio and fourth Sanchez Lopez. It was 1.379 at the end of the last lap, and I think that gap will have come down a little. The Mexican in clear air is running just a shade faster, I think, than all of the top 3 guys. The last lap he was the fastest man on the circuit, 127.164. Oh, and a big mistake by Siedler, gathers it up. Oh, lost his wing. So Norbert Siedler has lost part of the nose wing there in the mud. And fastest lap of the race was recorded by Norbert Siedler, but it was all too late. He flew across the grass, 126.8 across the line, but he was on the grass, in the mud and in a hole, and the gap's come down by 0.3 of a second. Sanchez Lopez now just a second behind D'Ambrosio and closing fast. He's 0.3 quicker than D'Ambrosio, and 0.7 quicker nearly than our race leader. And there is Norbert Siedler. He's just set the fastest lap of the race, and the car is out. Unfortunately, the grass here not only is not very flat, there is also surface water on the grass. Watch him here, out of the final corner. It's the fastest lap of the race, but he's on the dirt, and he's trying to get it in a straight line, and then tries to steer back before the nose digs in, and it just rips the wing off. And we've seen that every time any of these cars or the touring cars have gone off track this weekend so far in practice. The marshy, swampy land. You can see a huge, great patch of mud there. That was caused by just one Alfa Romeo running off wide there. Olivier Tielemans, he went through the slurry, and it just spat it all over the circuit. They had to get a big sweeping truck out to get rid of it. Across the line come the leaders then. End of lap 7. They're now onto lap 8. Bononomi leads by 0.37. D'Ambrosio 0.37 behind Anderson, and Sanchez Lopez 0.52 on that lap behind. So by the end of this straight, he may well be within shooting distance, and he's closing fast. Bononomi, Anderson, D'Ambrosio, your top 3. Sanchez Lopez right there. Rodolfo Avila now, the Macanese driver, up to 5th position, and he leads the next queue, but as you can see, they're a long way back. Oh, and that is the end of Giuseppe Terranova. He had problems at the start. Off the grid, he was on the grass, and he spun it in the final corner. Very easy to do. These bank corners give a lot of grip, but when they give up, they do give up. Now, Anderson redoubling his efforts, chasing Bononomi, digging in deep. In front of them looks like Provenzano, just about to be a lap down. And Anderson having a little lunge at Bononomi. He's lost ground, and right behind him is D'Ambrosio. Right behind him now, Sanchez Lopez. Avila in 5th, ahead of Pierre Rags, Rael Frey, Luca Persiani, Massimo Torre, 9th place, the man who lies 2nd in the standings, and 10th, Tor Graves. But it's all about these 4. They are way clear of everybody else. There is Giuseppe Terranova. Wanders back in, a little downhearted. 18-year-old racing with Allen Racing. And unfortunately, he's learned the hard way about being pinched in the final corner here at Anderstorp. Here's the next group then. And you can see Rodolfo Avila being chased closely by Pierre Rag, but Rag has got Rahel Frey, another of the JD Motorsport drivers. Swiss girl whose engine blew up so dramatically when she was looking very strong indeed in Porto. Then Persiani and Torre, the 2 Scuderia Farmer drivers. Those are the 2 bright red and white cars. And then back to our lead group. Nothing at all between them. Less than half a second between any of these cars, which is about as close as you normally get a chance to run. And everybody being a little cautious on lap 9 of 19, so still more than half the race distance to go. Got to save those tyres a little, perhaps, in case you need them in the dying laps. But also, they really need to try and get on with a bit of work. Now, down there in the final corners, with Terranova's car off the track, yellow flags being waved, so no overtaking there. Out onto the straight they come. Let's see if somebody can really get a good launch and use the toe that they get down this straight. Might be interesting to see what some of the drivers do in terms of setup for the second race, because while you want lots of grip in the bank corners, there are some good straights here, and you might want to think, perhaps, having raced the first time, about getting a little bit more of a low drag setup, taking away a little bit of wing and just giving yourself that speed advantage on the straights. Because we've got the first straight, we've got this second long one here, and Norbert Siedler wandering in. It was him we saw earlier, not Terranova. Siedler, 25 years old, and one of the sensations of Porto. Down out of the Opel curve here as well. Little short shoot up to Hansen, and if you can get a good aerodynamic run going and get some top speed advantage, there are 2 or 3 places on the circuit that you can use that and then survive the banked corners if you can. Round the carousel. There's the pit entry road on the bottom of the picture. There's Terranova back with the Allen Racing crew. That's quite enough of that, so let's get back to the leaders. Well, there's Terranova's car, and the leader's already across the line then. So a little bit of a deadlock at the moment. Bononomi, I think, we might find out afterwards is the guy who has got the car trimmed out flattest in terms of pace, because although he's leading these four along, they are not closing on him down the straight. And they really should be. They're not getting enough of a tow, and when they are close enough, they're still not getting enough of a tow. I think Bononomi may well be in fairly low drag mode at the moment. As you can see, there are a few stragglers here that have dropped out of the battles behind. But these guys definitely lapping a lot quicker than most out there. This group, Bononomi now 127.3s. The other three of them 127.5s. Avila leading the next group. He, Rag, are 127.7s, and Raal Frey 127.9 on the last lap. So they are 2/3 of a second a lap slower than the lead group. And that may be an indication that they're just squabbling with each other a little more than these guys are. So 0.44 first to second at the end of the last lap. Coming across the line now is another one of the back markers, just staying out of these guys' reach. But their rate of approach, they will catch him before the end of the race, so he'll have to be aware of that. He might have another 2 or 3 laps before he's holding them up. So Bononomi, the second car in your shot. There he is with the orange highlights. Anderson, D'Ambrosio, Sanchez Lopez, then Avila, the white car with the green highlights, the green colours of Macau, with Pierre Rag all over the back of him and having a look, but not this time. Rodolfo Avila, Pierre Rag, the battle for 5th. They've dropped Raal Frey, the Swiss girl, in 7th place on her own now, 1.3 seconds behind them at the line. And little lunge for the lead. Casper Andersson putting a lot of pressure on Marco Bononomi. Bononomi, you saw him in the middle of the road, and that means that we picked it up just after a mistake by him. He's watching the mirrors, and here comes Andersson. Dives to the inside, and Bononomi in trouble because Jerome D'Ambrosio's inside him as well. Into the carousel, it comes back for Bononomi. That was very fortunate, but Andersson now unleashed. Let's see what he can do on the next lap. They've been bottled up behind Marco Bononomi. Andersson has forced a mistake out of him, capitalized on it as well, and Bononomi looks like he's in trouble. Jerome D'Ambrosio goes straight by him, and no question Pablo Sanchez Lopez, the fourth of these cars, will try and do the same. And I wonder whether we're going to find out that the pole sitter is now fishing around for gears, because the way that suddenly Andersson went by, and equally suddenly he's lost a gear. He's lost a gear. As soon as they get onto a straight bit of track, the others come right by him. Yet in the corners, he can hold them off. He's lost top gear, I would think. Possibly even the top 2 gears, because I'm not sure which is 5th and which is 6th gear straights along here. But they just pull out and go by him, and that's a sure indicator that either he's got a big misfire at the top end of the rev range, or he's lost gears. Well, only time will tell. We'll only find out at the end. But this is how the lead changed. Casper Andersson dived inside, and once he was in the corners, Bononomi could hold his own. So nothing too much wrong with the driver, but clearly he's been hobbled by something. Andersson now with Jerome D'Ambrosio diving through past the back marker, Frankie Provenzano. And Provenzano will now have Sanchez Lopez coming by him as well. Well, Andersson led Bononomi by 1.4 at the line. He was 1.5 ahead of D'Ambrosio, and that's down to 1.2. So D'Ambrosio quicker, fastest lap of the race indeed this time round for Jerome D'Ambrosio in the 26s, 126.7. Only the second lap in the 26s, because as he crashed out of the race, Norbert Siedler set a 126.9. So D'Ambrosio, fastest man on the circuit. Casper Andersson just set his personal fastest lap of the race, and Sanchez Lopez held up 128.3. So he's lost 2 seconds in 2 laps to the leader and much more, trying to get by the slow car of Frankie Provenzano. who started second on the grid. Didn't see, have to admit, where Provenzano got bounced down the order, but perhaps a little bit of the bite a bit, because he was responsible for taking or denying two other drivers a chance of using some racetrack. And Chris van der Drift will certainly want to be having words with him. And so too, I would think, would be Nick de Bruyn, because both of them were forced off the track by Provenzano. Anyway, back to our race lead. Casper Anderson versus Jerome D'Ambrosio. This is very entertaining. Anderson here, 6th in the points, won the second race in Valencia, but since Valencia has only scored 4 points. Now he, and I have to say, I expected him to be one of the championship front runners, coming off such a strong Formula Renault Euro Cup series last year. But he's behind Chris van der Drift. Van der Drift also with a win, but with 2 third places in Brno and a finish in the points in Porto, has outscored his teammate. So Anderson really needs the win here, really desperately needs the win here. Bononomi, well, they've taken a steering wheel off to try and see what's going on. And that suggests to me that it's not a rev problem, but it is a gear shifting problem. Anderson could really use these points, but it's going to make very little difference or very little impact on Jerome D'Ambrosio. D'Ambrosio is really building himself quite a championship here. 5th place in Valencia and then 2nd. 2 third places in Po, 2 wins in Brno, and a 3rd place, and then his first 0 of the season in Porto. So dramatic points scoring all the way through. He's only twice been off the podium, and one of those was a retirement in Porto. So he really has scored very strongly indeed right from the beginning of the season. And confirmation comes up from the pits that Bononomi's car was jammed in 4th, which is why he was so good through here, because it's 4th gear corners, and why he was so rubbish on the straights, because they're 6th gear straights. So Bononomi's car had indeed lost the top 2 gears. Now this is the battle for 4th place now, Rodolfo Avila and Pierre Rug. And this could be entertaining as well for both these guys. They could both really do with some points at the moment. Avila so far has scored 0 all season, and the young driver from Macau would really like to get some decent points. Rodolfo Avila 4th place, and because of the problems in front, he's come up from 8th on the grid. Made a good start, but has benefited as 2 or 3 cars have dropped out in front of him. So battle for 8th place now with Massimo Torre, and he leads Ignazio Beloardo. These two raced each other in the Formula 3000 Masters last year and rejoined battle again this year. Just behind Avila is Luca Persiani now, ahead of Raul Frey. Then these guys, Torre and Beloardo. So Raul Frey is slipping down the order. You can see the Swiss girl just on the back of the queue. There she is. So Luca Persiani has come up strongly as well from 13th on the grid. So he's had a good overtaking race up to 6th place. True, we've lost the front row men, Bononomi and Provenzano. We've also lost Chris van der Drift, who qualified in 3rd. So the top 3 on the grid out of the race. We've lost Norbert Siedler, who qualified in 6th as well. So 4 of the top 6 no longer running. And that gives everybody else who didn't get the most out of the cars in the final few minutes of qualifying a little bit of a better opportunity. But at the moment, with 10 points for the win and 8 for 2nd place, Casper Anderson won't extend his championship lead. Jerome D'Ambrosio won't extend his championship lead over Casper Anderson, but he will over everybody else. Already with 49 points, Jerome D'Ambrosio. His closest rival, Salvatore Gatto, who's not scoring at the moment. He's down in 12th. Gatto is 13 points adrift. Sanchez Lopez 17 points adrift. So Jerome D'Ambrosio will do himself no end of good here if he can resist the temptation to have a half-hearted lunge at race leader Casper Anderson. Of course, all the race drivers want to win a race, but in the end, D'Ambrosio is putting together a career rebuilding drive here. Michele Caliendo, we saw him on the grid at the beginning of the race, talking to his engineer. Now he's managed to find somewhere relatively dry to go off in the gravel traps. Couldn't slow it at the end of the straight, nearly took Oliver Campos-Hulloff with him, but went off on his own. And indeed, yesterday, one of the touring car drivers, trying to avoid the gravel trap, went left at the end of the straight to avoid the gravel trap and then couldn't stop it. The only thing that slowed the car down was when he hit a tree. So not quite the ideal way for Michel Jourdain to introduce himself to the Scandinavian wildlife, but there you go. So 17 laps completed. This is lap 18 of 19, penultimate lap of the race then. And unless Anderson makes a mistake, I do not see a move coming from Jerome D'Ambrosio. The lead pair comfortably clear of Pablo Sanchez Lopez. Yellow flags at turn 1 as well. So a couple of corners restricted here. There's the Cram Competition boys watching their man in second place. And from D'Ambrosio, very, very impressive race again. He was the fastest man at the end of qualifying, possibly by dint of being the very last one across the line at the end of the session. But also, he was right up there, swapping times with the top 6 or 7 guys all the way through the session. So he really had a handle on this racetrack. Casper Anderson holding him off, though, still leads. And last time around here at Anderstorp, you can see shimmering heat haze. There hasn't been much of that so far this weekend. Normally it's been the rain bouncing off the road that's obscured visibility. And Anderson's off the straight. Down towards Matson. And heading up to the GP curve. This little short shoot won't give D'Ambrosio much of a chance, and trouble there. That's Ignazio Belluardo and Massimo Torre. Yes, it is. The two of them, they were battling for 8th place, and they're both off on the last lap. Here's how. Lunged to the inside and got himself onto the wet curbing, and that's the final corner. So he made a real hash of that, Ignazio Belluardo, and thumped into Massimo Torre. Casper Anderson then heading towards the checkered flag for the final time. They swing around the carousel down into the last corner, and that's where the yellow flags are out as well. And out safely across the line. Victory for Casper Anderson, his second of the season. And he will be delighted with that, but twice as delighted, I would think, Jerome D'Ambrosio. He will have felt a bit miffed last night that his fastest lap was taken away at the end of the qualifying session. He wasn't alone. The session was effectively foreshortened. And Sanchez Lopez third. We missed him across the line, but fourth for Rodolfo Avila, fifth for Pierre Rugg, sixth for Luca Persiani, seventh for Ryle Frey. And it looks as though Tor Graves should finish in 8th place. A long way behind at the moment, and he has. Tor Graves claims his first point of the season, so that's a very important step forward for Tor Graves and for John Village Automotive. They have had nothing but bad luck all season. He claims 8th place. Dominic Mermans 12 seconds behind him in 9th. Then Salvatore Gatto, the man who was second in the championship, comes home a tardy 10th. Celebrations for race winner Casper Anderson and for second place man Jerome D'Ambrosio here in Anderstorp. Pablo Sanchez Lopez still with the helmet on there in the middle of your picture. He was in 3rd place, the young Mexican, just 17 years old, and he really is having a very strong season. But Jerome D'Ambrosio, our championship leader, extends his gap. He now has 57 points in the series. Second place man is now Pablo Sanchez Lopez on 38, 2 ahead of Salvatore Gatto, who did not score here. Casper Anderson helps himself to a share of 4th place in the series, now tied on 25 points with his teammate Chris van der Drift. Let's get down there and find out what they thought about it. Sanchez Lopez on the left, Ambrosio on the right, and you saw Casper Andersson, our race winner as well, waiting to have a quick word with the cameras. Don't forget, second race tomorrow, and that also will be coming to you live from Anderstorp.
Casper Andersson, what a great victory under the pressure of D'Ambrosio. It's a big relief after a bad period for you in the last races.
Yes, it's a very big release. I've been struggling quite a lot the past races because of problem with the car. Last time I started in pole in Porto, but the engine failure after in the first lap, so I lost 10 points already there. So, but now I got another 10 points.
Congratulations, thank you.
So he needs to go out and do it all again tomorrow. This is where it happened, as our race leader, the pole sitter Marco Bononomi, found that he'd run out of the two top gears. His car jammed in fourth. Andersson dived to the inside, and that started the rot as far as Bononomi was concerned. Another lap, he'd be in the pits and in retirement. There is the unofficial result then. Andersson, D'Ambrosio, Sanchez Lopez on the podium. Rodolfo Avila scores points for the first time. So too does Pierre Rag, so too Torgraves, and Luca Persiani as well, I think, has not scored up to this stage. So the rest of them following in behind. It will be a big disappointment for Salvatore Gatto, Chris van der Drift as well, who both were well up in the championship, failed to score. But the front row starters, Bononomi and Provenzano, as well as third place starter Chris van der Drift, all failing to finish. So too did Norbert Siedler. 4 of the top 6 cars not making it to the line. And the championship then, D'Ambrosio now 19 points clear of his closest rival, Sanchez Lopez. The rest need him to start breaking down or crashing quite urgently now. So that's the way the series looks at the moment. Norbert Siedler, 13 points, scored nothing today, but did set what was at that stage the fastest lap of the race as he crashed out. Well, that's it from round 9 of the series here in Anderstorp, and the 10th race in the International Formula Masters Series will come to you live tomorrow morning on Eurosport 2. So join us for that. Until then, from Anderstorp, from me, Martin Haven, it's bye for now. So there's the view over the paddock at Anderstorp, and after some very wet weather so far this weekend, fortunately at least one race got through without the intervention of the weather gods. But the signs of what is in store for us for the rest of the weekend are everywhere around the circuit, and some of these mechanics are going to go home with trench foot. So that's it, tomorrow's race live. Don't forget the World Touring Car Championship coming up as well. Both races live on Eurosport on Sunday, and we'll be bringing you all the qualifying and morning warm-up action as well. Stay tuned and enjoy the rest of your Eurosport weekend.